Ward Trucking, and another tough question answered. All that and more coming up now on Joy in the City, True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations having an impact in our city. All too often, we hear about the problems and dysfunction in our culture, but we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at the good things going on right here in our community. I'm Lindsay Irvin, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. We want to thank our program sponsors, Park Home, for the donation of furniture used in our studio, Made by Vogel for the contribution of many props in our studio, and our platinum sponsor, Harry's Construction, for their ongoing support of Joy in the City. With a loan of $300 to buy a used truck, Ward Trucking was born. Today, we will hear from Bill Ward Jr., a fourth-generation member of the family, as he tells us a little bit about this family business.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you share some of the history of Ward Trucking?
Yes, Ward Trucking, we are celebrating our 90th year in business. We started in 1931, founded by my great-grandfather, Bill Ward, and I serve as the fourth-generation president of the company. Additionally, we have my brother, Adam, is involved in the company, as well as my two twin cousins, David and James, are also involved in the company. And we have 21 locations with about 700 trucks and about 1,500 employees.
I didn't realize it was that big. I've seen them on the road once in a while, but I didn't realize you had, what'd you say, 21 locations?
21 locations,
they...
New York to the Carolinas,
okay.
and then New Jersey all the way out through Michigan.
Wow. And when did you start? When did you step in and start working?
I joined the company 4.5 years ago when I moved back to town. I was in the Navy and moved back to town, began working at the company, and I've been president for about 1.5 years now.
Oh, great. Thank you for your service in the Navy. Appreciate
my
what
pleasure.
you've done for us. And you said your great-grandfather started it, so that's what, how many, 4 generations?
4 generations, yes.
And were you all named Bill?
All named Bill.
Okay. Had to ask that.
We keep it pretty simple.
And what types of things do you haul?
We haul general commodities. We're less than truckload. And really what that means is a lot of palletized freight. But we do furniture, we'll do paper products. Really, we keep it pretty general.
Okay. And is there anything unique that sticks out in your mind that you have shipped over the years?
I remember a few years ago we sent a surfboard to Troy Polamalu, and I'm a big Steeler fan, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I like that. That's interesting.
But over the years, we've done some cool things as far as relief missions to hurricane-affected areas and things like that. So it's always nice to have that community service component too with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really impressive. Do you have any idea of total miles traveled since the company began? Probably not.
Oh, that one might be tough.
Do you know what they do each year?
No, we have a lot of tractors that, they do about 1 million miles before we retire them.
Okay.
So, we have drivers running really 24/7.
And you said 21 locations, but do you ship nationwide or do you just stick on this side of the country?
Directly, we only ship on Mid-Atlantic region.
Okay.
But we have partnership agreements across the country. So on any given day, for example, like tonight, we'll probably load 5 trailers to our partner in California out of Pittsburgh.
Okay. And
so we're able, through that network, we're able to give our customers national reach.
Wow, that's good. I didn't realize that that trucking companies would have partners like that. So they just go like halfway and then somebody takes it the rest of the way?
Yeah, we partner with like-minded family-run carriers.
Okay.
And we have about 6 partnerships across the country that give us reach everywhere.
Okay. And you said about 1,500 employees?
Yes.
And how many of those are drivers?
About 700 of those are drivers.
Okay.
And the rest are support function.
And how would you describe your company's priorities? Like, do you guys have a mission statement?
Yes, we have cultural beliefs and a mission statement. I mean, really boiling it down to, though, first and foremost, we're in business to serve our customers. We are a high service carrier, and we try to remain customer focused every single day. Secondly, we're all about people development, and we really value our employees. We want to make sure that they're safe and well trained and well taken care of.
Okay. And I know it's a family company. How many of your family is currently employed?
Currently, we have 6 Ward family members that work there.
Okay. And when your great-grandfather started it, what was his goal? Did he just want to do a local company, or was he looking to expand as far as you guys have now?
So in 1931, my great-grandfather was a used car salesman, and he lost his job like many did during the Great Depression. And his friends locally here were all farmers, and they needed a way to get their farm products from central PA to the New York metro area. And so he got a loan from Altoona Trust at the time for $300, and he hired a driver and loaded up all these farm products, took them to New York City, came back, paid the driver, made a payment on the lease to the unit, and it turns out that there wasn't any left. And so he said, I don't know if this is going to work. And then somebody told him that he needed to get a backhaul coming back from New York City. And so he started doing that, actually picking up oil products and bringing them back to the farmers. And that's really how the genesis of our company started.
That's amazing. First of all, that the Altoona Trust would give him a loan, because in those times it was very difficult to get them from
Yes.
anybody, but then that he took that circumstance and turned it around and made something really amazing out of it.
And with the Altoona Trust, eventually got acquired by several different banks, but it's now M&T Bank, which we still do all our banking with. And that first customer, we still do business with as well.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great story. Well, I do want to thank you for coming in today and sharing your story with us. Is there anything else that we need to know about Ward Trucking?
No, just appreciate the opportunity, and we're want to thank our customers and our employees, because without them, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, now, each time I see one on the road, I will think of you and your company's legacy.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Made by Vogel is a father and son business that produces high-quality handmade wooden products such as cutting boards, bowls, bottle stoppers, and more. You can't go wrong buying from Made by Vogel.
Today's Platinum sponsor is Harry's Construction, whose motto is, "If you can dream it, we can create it." Recently opening Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center so you, the consumer, can see examples of the variety of services provided by the team at Harry's Construction. Regardless of the project size, Harry's team approaches each project as if it is his own home. Be sure to visit Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center at 114 Main Street in Bellwood. You can also visit their website to see pictures of home improvement projects over the years.
Today, we will hear from Pastor Derek Heilmann as he answers a tough question.
Well, Derek, thank you again for joining me today. And every once in a while, I'd like to ask pastors a tough question that a lot of people may not hear some of these things from the pulpit and just wondering about certain entities. So the question I want to ask you today is, why do you feel, if you can give me an understanding of why do you feel that God allows pain or God allows suffering in the body, in people today?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that this is a problem that everybody deals with, right? There's nobody exempt from this question. 10 years ago, we had just had our son, and we prayed every day during the pregnancy for our son, and so we were pregnant again and praying every day for this new baby, and 17 weeks in, we lost the baby. And you're left with this like, well, why? Like it just doesn't make sense. And it didn't matter that I was a follower of Jesus. It didn't matter, if you're not a follower of Jesus. Like people lose pregnancies, and the question comes down to why. And I think realistically, when it comes to suffering, everybody just wants to know why. Everybody wants it to have meaning. But nobody really has a good answer. There's no 2-minute answer that can solve that question. The Buddhist says, well, the meaning is, it's really just a difference in mindset. There's no such thing as actual suffering. It's just you need to rise above it. So the Buddhist doesn't actually even have a good answer for that. It's just rise above it. The Hindu says, well, your experience of suffering really is just to pay you back for your past life and all the sin of your past life. So it's like your previous lives have summed up, and this is karma, right? You get what you have earned. Interestingly enough, the secular humanist now, the atheist now, says, well, it's not real. It's meaningless. We don't actually have a reason for it existing, and so we just push it out, right? Like everything that's negative or bad or suffering, we really don't want to see it. And when we're forced to see it, here we are sitting in the middle of a COVID pandemic, right? When you're forced to see it, all it creates is outrage. There's just anger because it's meaningless, and so everybody has to deal with it, and there's not really compelling reasons why it happens, and so everybody comes up with, but the Christian says, well, I don't exactly understand why, but I do believe that there's a redemptive purpose for it, that we are all going to experience suffering, and God has promised that it will make sense in the end, that we can all look back and say, well, okay, there was reason for the suffering, but we just a lot of times don't get to know. And so I think when you think about suffering, that's where we are, right? That we're in a place where it oftentimes doesn't make sense, and yet sometimes there's a glimpse of why. I mean, I think of people who, there was in the church we came from, there was a pastor who did a PhD dissertation on why people at Vineyard Columbus give their lives to Jesus. And an overwhelming percentage of people who gave their lives to Jesus did so because they were in a time of suffering. So you might say, well, why does God allow suffering? Well, it maybe is because that's what it took to get your attention. Or perhaps, if we think about the story I just told about us losing a pregnancy, we didn't have any idea how to make sense of that. And yet, years later, after we had processed that pain, we saw somebody else who lost a pregnancy, and we were able to be present for them in a way that we otherwise couldn't have. We were able to explain how we walked through it and what we did to deal with pain. But the reality is there's just not a clear, why. Maybe a lot of times we just don't get to know why. And yet, if you think about Jesus, and you look at Jesus and you say, well, Jesus should have lived a painless life if this was all perfect, and yet Jesus walks in and walks into death and suffering for the sake of redemption of the world. And I think that's a pattern for the way that the world works, that there's some redemptive purpose for the suffering that we experience. And so maybe we get to know that, like in the event of walking with somebody who loses a pregnancy, or maybe we don't get to know that this side of Jesus returning. But I believe that the pattern Jesus shows us is that there's a redemptive purpose for suffering.
Sure. Many believers will quote the scripture, God works all things together for the good for those who believe. And we can quote that, and we if you're on the other side of that, you can say that's true. But when you're in the midst of it, you don't always want to hear that.
Right, right.
How do you help people that are in the midst of the trial, and when just saying, well, it will get better, God will work it out, or God has a plan? How do you address someone who's in the middle of a time of suffering to help motivate them to keep pushing to come out the other side?
Yeah, I know there's lots of ways that you don't do that. When we went to the hospital, when you lose a pregnancy and they take you through the surgery and all that stuff, we were in the room and Jerry was getting prepared, and the nurse came in and she goes, maybe it's just better this way. Maybe it's just better? well, you know, God has a plan. I'm like, that doesn't help me right now at all because I don't see that. I think a lot of times what people need is someone to be present with them. You know, I think when you think about how pain works, when you're by yourself, pain seems to be so much greater than when you're with somebody who's helping you walk through it. And so I think most of the time, if you want to help someone walk through suffering and pain, it's to be present with them. It's to not try to offer all the explanations for why. I think that's some of the most unhelpful things, even though they're theologically correct, right? This is all theologically sound, it's accurate, it's biblical, and yet it hurts. It just compounds the fact that I'm not experiencing what you're saying. And so I think just being able to be present with someone and being able to be a shoulder to cry on it. The person who helped us the most when we lost our baby was this woman who eventually moved here to help us plant our church. But she said, I will just come and stare at walls with you guys. And she just sat on the floor with us. She didn't offer anything. She just sat with us, and we cried, and everything was tough to walk through, but she just sat with us, and she was willing to be present with us and to weep with us. And there's biblical passage for that, right? Weep with those who weep, mourn with those who mourn, right? And we can rejoice with those who rejoice. And I think if we could get a much better hold on the one another's, like doing that together, I think we would be much further ahead in helping people walk through pain and suffering.
Derek, I think this was great insight. Appreciate you taking the time to answer this. And I know people go through a variety of things, part of life, ups and downs. And sometimes as pastors, we feel like I got to have answers for everything. And the reality is we just don't.
Yeah.
And I think what you said today was phenomenal. So I appreciate your time sharing with us.
Sure.
Right.
Appreciate it.
As we continue today, a few thoughts from a Joy in the City contributor, Kelly Ferguson, as she shares the Word with Kelly.
Today on The Word with Kelly, we are going to talk about selfishness. I was so thrilled when the Lord gave me this word. And I am hoping that you hear the sarcasm in my voice, because this is just another word that, let's just say I have some major work to do in. Sometimes I feel like these podcasts are meant more for me than anyone else. But in all seriousness, God is so gentle with his correction towards me. And I'm thankful that he's so willing to speak to me. Now I just need to be obedient to what he is speaking. Selfishness. The acting or thinking of one's own well-being alone. Selfishness is all about looking out for number one. It's about wanting things our way and only our way. We will lie, pout, manipulate someone, or distort the truth just to get our way. Most of, if not all of the ills of society can be traced back to a selfish heart. Murder, robbery, cheating, rudeness, and on and on. A selfish heart only cares about me, myself, and I. It's an egocentric mindset that believes that the world revolves around you. And no offense to any of the youth that are listening to this, but this phenomenon is most prominent in teenagers. However, I hear that most people tend to grow out of it by their mid to late 70s. So that means I have 30 more years until I get it right. So there's hope for me yet. In all seriousness, when we are ruled by selfishness, our minds will allow us to justify anything and everything, so as long as we get what we want, as long as those selfish desires are being fulfilled. The world today tells us it's all about me. Just take a close look at most advertising that's done today, and you will see at its core, it's the self-interest of the customer. Or how about back in 2013 when the word of the year was selfie? With the invention of the smartphone, we have certainly fallen in love with selfies. It's a make yourself happy no matter what it takes or cost kind of world that we are living in. But in doing this, we are not honoring or pleasing God. In actuality, selfishness is putting up a wall between us and God. And one of the most distinguishing marks of a mature child of God is how unselfish we are. Ouch. Did you hear that? 2 Corinthians 5:15 says, "And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again." It's not about me anymore attitude. This is hard for me, if I'm being honest. So I'm going to share a little something that just happened recently. My husband takes Jax to school while I get Parker ready, and then he comes back to take Parker to school. He does this so that I don't have to get myself ready, and then I can go back to sleep. Obviously, if you know anything about me or if you've listened to these podcasts, you know how much I love my sleep. My body seems to just work different than most. I like to stay up pretty late and then also wake up late. In fact, on the days that I do have to wake up early, I can even often feel sick for a few hours. So let me just say first, how thankful I am that I have a husband that does this for me. But let's get back to the story. One night, he asked if I could do him a favor. And my first response was no, even though I was joking. Maybe it was a sign my heart was already not in the right place. Then he asks, "Can you take Parker to school tomorrow? Because I would like to get to work a little earlier because I have a lot to do." My response, and let me be honest, not thrilled to share this with you, but my response was, no, I really don't want to do that. He didn't fight me on it. One, maybe because he's just not that type of guy, and two, probably because he figured he wasn't going to change my mind anyway. But I was being selfish, and I knew it. I should have just done this for him, but the selfishness won out. Sometimes I wonder why my flesh is so strong when I know that I am spending time in the Word and prayer. It's a hard journey I'm on, but I felt God say, you now are at least recognizing that you are in the wrong. Before, it didn't even cross your mind. Thank you again, God, for that gentle response. I had to ask myself, what is making me so selfish? And you may have to ask yourself that same question if this is an area that you struggle in too. We must recognize that if it is an issue, that we need to ask God to help us change our mindset. Psalm 119, 36 through 37 says, "Turn my heart toward your statutes and not toward selfish gain. Turn my eyes away from worthless things. Preserve my life according to your word." And when we ask, we then must have a willingness to change. Then start looking for those opportunities to be unselfish. And let me say, if you ask, God will provide them. Philippians 2, 3-4 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others." So start looking for ways to help your neighbors or to bless someone in your church. Help someone at the grocery store. And most of all, let your family be part of this heart change. There's no limits, no boundaries. If there's a need, let's try to meet it if at all possible. Are you willing to meet the needs that you see before you, or are you so busy meeting your own needs that you miss the needs of others right before your eyes? And do you only give it if it doesn't cost you anything? You see, it's easy for me to go out to lunch with another lady that's a friend and talk about God because I enjoy it. It only costs me time, which I have, and the cost of the meal. But what if I'm needed at 7 o'clock in the morning? Or my little boy wants to sit and play a game when I just would like to watch TV? Or someone needs me during one of my son's baseball games? Am I willing then? Mother Teresa once said, "If you give something that you can live without, it's not giving." We need to stop focusing on self and remember that God has called us to love others. Matthew 22, 36-40 says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. The second part of this verse doesn't just mean your literal neighbor, but it means your family, your friends, and even those that you just run into. Every single person that you come in contact with can be an opportunity to be selfless. What's important to God must become essential to us. His passion is for people, and it has to be ours too. Let's get anchored to Jesus, who has always had a servant's heart, and let him use us to be the servants that he's called us to be. Being a follower of Christ means we take on the attributes of Christ. And this one is certainly something that I want to work on. Ask yourself this question. How do your family, your friends, even your coworkers see you? Do they see you as selfless or selfish? I'm not sure I'd like the answer that I would get. So am I willing to humble myself and be more concerned about the needs of others over and above my own needs and desires? Am I willing to let Jesus give me a servant's heart? To this I say, yes, Lord. Please help me to be more like you. Help me to have that servant's heart. Help me to be willing to meet the needs of others and to not get so caught up in my own needs and wants. Lord, let me love like you love. Holly Furtick, in a message that I just listened to, said, our instinct is to hold on tightly to everything you have, but God says, keep giving. Be generous with your love. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your encouragement. Oh, this is the heart of God. We were created by God to do something more than just what we desire. We are his church, and we need to reach out to the sick, the hurting, the confused, the lost. We need to give of our time, of our money, and our resources. We need to be less about me and more about them. It's a calling that he's placed on every single man and woman. So why not ask yourself, how can I be a servant today? And I promise you that if you do, you will not regret it. Have a blessed day as you serve others.
If you know a person or an organization impacting our city, we want to hear about it. You can contact us at 814-944-1948 or by email at stories@joyinthecity.org. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching Joy in the City, True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations having an impact on our community on ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us each week on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, be encouraged because God is moving in our city.